Hey, my name's Emily, and a while ago, my family decided I wasn't worth a seat at their table. They stopped inviting me to things, said I was going through a rough patch, called me a failure behind my back, and sometimes right to my face. Now, they book reservations at the most talked-about restaurant in town, the one with the fresh food, warm service, and the owner they never bothered to Google. Me, grab your coffee, because this one's served cold. It didn't happen all at once. No one looked me in the eye and said, "You're not part of the family anymore." But I felt it. In every invitation that never came. In every Sunday gathering I found out about through pictures, smiling faces, full plates, except one seat left empty. Mine. At first, I thought it was just a mix-up. "We figured you were busy, Emily." But it wasn't that. It was a choice. Quiet. Gradual. And it hurt more than any words, because it came from the people I love the most. The bankruptcy was just the excuse. Even before that, I was already seen as the different one. I worked for myself, had crazy ideas, always talking about entrepreneurship. When the business I started with my cousin Ryan went under, it was just the final push they needed. He ran off with part of the money, and I was left to face the debt. To the family, I was the failure, the reckless one, the disappointment, and no one stood up for me. Not my mom, not my uncles, not even my sister Madison, who always seemed to enjoy putting me down with polished words. There was Sarah's wedding. I found out about it days later through her Instagram stories. Everyone was there, even relatives from out of state. Everyone but me. I called my aunt, confused. She laughed awkwardly. "Oh, Emily, we just thought you wouldn't feel comfortable. People were going to talk business and all, you know." I stayed silent, because yes, I knew. They were embarrassed of me, the bankrupt one, a walking reminder of what they feared becoming. I started wondering, had I really been excluded, or had I just never fit in to begin with? I remembered the little things, the sideways comments, the muffled laughs. "Still doing that little food thing?" they'd ask before it all collapsed. After the bankruptcy, they didn't ask anything at all. No one called. No one asked if I needed help. No one even cared if I had a roof over my head. It was like I died, only I hadn't. There was one Easter I'll never forget. My mom's house was full, laughter echoing, the table perfectly set. I saw it all on my sister's Facebook. The caption said, "Family is everything." I read that while sitting on an air mattress, holding a cold sandwich in a dark apartment. My power had been cut off. I didn't cry. Not that day. I'd already cried enough. That day, something just clicked. I wasn't part of anything anymore. There's something people don't tell you about being rejected by the ones who should have held you close. You start to reject yourself, too. I avoided mirrors. I hid. I wore neutral clothes. I kept my replies short, pretended to be busy when really, I just didn't want to be remembered as the one who lost everything. And still, a part of me hoped someone would notice, that someone would miss me. But no one did. Not when I sold my laptop for $80 to pay rent. Not when I went weeks eating nothing but rice and eggs. Not when I stopped showing up at family events. If anyone noticed, they pretended not to. And that hurt more than any insult. Because the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And that's exactly what I got. I wish I could say I bounced back quickly. That one fall was enough for me to rise. But the truth is I sank. Deep. I had anxiety attacks, fear of the future, and shame so thick I could barely breathe. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering, if I disappeared, would anyone even notice? But somewhere in that darkness, a spark lit up. Not revenge. Survival. Rebuilding. Quiet. Lonely. Mine. To my family, I was no longer part of anything. But I was still here. And that was a start. The cruelest part of going bankrupt wasn't losing the money. It was losing my place. Overnight, I went from being the entrepreneur of the family to the one who got in over her head. Some mornings, I'd wake up and not even know what to do first, look for a job, pay a bill, or just try to breathe. I lived in a rundown studio in Long Beach. Rent was tight, The neighborhood was loud, and the noise kept me up most nights. But the worst noise came from inside my own head. I got turned down more times than I can count, and some rejections hurt worse than slaps. A store manager once told me I was overqualified for a cashier position. Another looked at my resume and said, "You tanked a business and want to work here?" He smiled, but it wasn't kindness. It was judgment. I walked out of that interview with my hands shaking. And I thought, is this my life now? Being reduced to my biggest mistake. But instead of quitting, I hardened and kept going. I started selling homemade brownies at intersections. I'd get up at 5 a.m., throw on a backpack, and take 2 buses to Venice Beach. More foot traffic meant better odds. What hurt wasn't the work. It was the way people looked at me. Some looked away. Some stared with pity. One woman dropped a $5 bill into my box and said, "You should be in school, not doing this." I smiled, but inside, I was bleeding. One day, I saw a girl I knew from college outside a coffee shop. She had a sleek blazer, high heels, the kind of face that looked like it had never seen failure. Me. I was sweaty, in an apron, holding a cooler full of food. She pretended not to see me, but I saw her. And in that moment, I made a silent vow. No one would ever make me ashamed of my hustle again. If they were too busy to see me fall, they didn't deserve a front row seat when I rose. The idea came on an ordinary day. My downstairs neighbor caught a whiff of something I'd cooked and asked if I sold meals. I said no, but the next day I brought her one. Then another. Within a week, I was delivering 10 a day. Simple meals. Healthy. Affordable. But made with care. And more than that, with dignity. It was the first time in a long while someone paid me for something I made with my own hands. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom. Not the few people who still sent me birthday texts and generic holiday messages. It was mine. Just mine. My quiet little rebuild. And it wasn't pride. It was protection. Because I knew, if they found out, they'd laugh. Call it a phase. Dismiss it before it even started. And I wasn't going to share my progress with people who never once shared their table with me. I bought a cheap notebook from a drugstore and started writing everything down. Recipes, feedback, name ideas, bills. I watched business videos at night, earbuds in, while cooking for the next day. I had no idea where it would lead, but it was better than standing still. Rock bottom wasn't the fall, it was staying down. And I had something to prove. Not to them. To me. I remember the day I scraped together enough to rent a shared kitchen for $300 a month. It was a huge risk, but something inside me whispered, go. The first time I walked into that little space, I trembled. It was cramped, hot, but it smelled like food and possibility. That day, I wrote a sentence and taped it to the mirror in my tiny bathroom. I still have it. One day they'll praise the taste of my food, not knowing it was born from hunger for respect. Their rejection fed me. Every whispered laugh. Every unexplained absence. Every silence when I needed someone the most. None of it broke me. Quite the opposite. It made me hungry. And that hunger taught me how to cook. The shared kitchen was small, stuffy, and split between me and 3 other small business owners. But to me, it was a temple. My shift ran from 4 to 7 a.m. Before the sun came up, I was already there, hair tied back, stained apron, eyes burning from exhaustion. I did everything myself, bought the ingredients, cooked, packed, labeled. Then I'd load the meals into a cooler and walk the streets of Pasadena, knocking on doors. It was exhausting, but it was mine, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was building something. It wasn't always pretty. Some doors slammed in my face. Others never even opened. One time, outside a mansion on the corner, a woman looked me up and down and said, "Housekeepers use the back entrance, sweetheart." I just smiled, because trying to explain to someone like that I was selling fresh, healthy food, made with real ingredients and a soul starving for dignity, was a waste of breath. That day, I made a decision. I would never ask permission to exist again. The first few months were a mix of tiny wins and painful stumbles. A batch of spoiled chicken set me back an entire week. A single complaint on social media nearly ruined my reputation. But others stood up for me. The ones who could taste the care in the food. The ones who looked me in the eye and said, "There's something special in the seasoning." And there was my story. Everything I couldn't say out loud. It was all there on the plate. As orders picked up, I rented more kitchen hours. I partnered with local gyms, schools, and small offices. A local nutritionist started referring clients. Before I knew it, I was delivering nearly 200 meals a week. That's when I realized I couldn't keep doing this alone. I needed help, and I needed to trust. Two things that used to terrify me. But growth means making space. And I was finally ready. My first hire was Olivia, young single mom, just out of a shelter. She reminded me of myself. Quiet at first, but hungry to make it. Then came Marcus, an ex-con with a gift for cutting meat. Nobody wanted to give him a shot. I did. Before long, we were a team, worn out but light-hearted. Between pots and stories, we started laughing again. And in that warm little kitchen, something beautiful happened. I found a new kind of family. We registered the business, officially. I picked a name that felt strong, but didn't include mine. I didn't want the spotlight. I wanted freedom. Rooted Kitchen, because this was food with roots, with a story, with soul. The logo was simple. The packaging was sustainable. Customers loved it. Then someone posted about us. Someone else shared. A fitness blogger made a video. And just like that, it blew up. For the first time, the world started to see me. But I still hoped my family wouldn't. One night, Olivia hugged me and said, "Thank you for giving me this place." I smiled, but my throat tightened. Because the truth was, they gave me a place too. That little kitchen in the making gave back everything my family had taken. A sense of belonging. Respect. Connection. The difference was, here, no one saw me as the failure. They saw me as the leader. The woman who built something from nothing. The woman who didn't quit. Even then, I still kept my face out of it. No interviews, no videos, nothing that tied me personally to the brand. The people who knew Emily Thomas had no idea I was the woman behind Rooted Kitchen. And that gave me peace. I wanted people to love what I built, not out of pity, but because it truly mattered. Cooking in the dark taught me to trust my instincts, to smell when someone was rooting against me, to hear the silence of fake concern, and to recognize, with deep gratitude, the people who show up to build with you. The world turned its back on me, but in that cramped kitchen, flour on my shirt and fire under the pan, I started building my empire. Before long, Rooted Kitchen went from a simple meal prep brand to a real restaurant. Small at first, but with lines out the door. Word of mouth did what no marketing campaign ever could. People came not just for the food, but for the feeling. A sense of home, of purpose, of care. It was soul food, and without knowing it, they were tasting mine. Every detail carried a piece of me, and yet my name was nowhere. The brand was everything. I was no one. The first article came out in a local lifestyle magazine. The headline read, "Rooted Kitchen, the taste of anonymous resilience." They talked about the mission, the philosophy, the diverse and welcoming team. But not a single word about who had founded it. That was on purpose. When they called asking for an interview, I politely declined. The brand speaks for itself. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to risk someone in my family recognizing my voice. I needed to protect what I had built from their judgment. One day, a customer came in excited. "Emily, some folks from my church were raving about Rooted. They say the owner's this mysterious chef." I laughed, because I was a mystery, even to myself, sometimes. What had started with fear and flour had turned into a respected restaurant, with a wait list, press, podcasts. And no one knew that behind the counter, I was still that same woman who once sold brownies on the corner to keep the gas on. My family? Nothing. Not a text. Not a call. Not a single, "How are you?" I still saw the photos, the gatherings, the inside jokes. All the same, like I had never existed. The irony, One time, I saw my cousin post a story at Rooted. She was at a table with her friends, taking a picture of her plate. The caption read, "Hidden gem." I stared at it for a while. She praised the food, not realizing the menu had been designed by the failure of the family. I heard that my aunt told a neighbor, "That new place is great, right? Too bad it's not owned by anyone we know." That hit different. I laughed. Because I haven't been one of you for a long time now. Blood doesn't excuse silence. I stopped expecting anything from them. No applause, no apology, no acknowledgement. And that was when I finally felt free. While they pretended I didn't exist, I was expanding. I signed a deal with a distributor, opened a second location in Santa Monica. A third was in the works. I started building an admin team, a CEO, an ops manager, a brand consultant. Rooted wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a movement, a symbol. But to my family, I was still Emily, the one who failed. That was fine. They didn't need to know. The world did. There were moments I almost texted, almost sent the article, almost typed, "Hey, remember me?" But I didn't, because that would have been me asking for approval. And I don't live in that space anymore. My success doesn't need a stamp from the people who erased me. I learned to enjoy the victory in silence, like a well-prepared dish, warm, balanced, and served with dignity. Even with all the growth, some days were still hard. There were nights I didn't sleep, moments I missed old hugs, days it hurt knowing my own mother had never stepped inside my restaurant. But even on those days, I didn't turn back, because now I had a table where I was heard, a team that called me their leader, customers who thanked me with tears in their eyes. I was finally part of something bigger. My name wasn't on the sign, but it was in the seasoning, in the care, in the grit that kept that place alive. Rooted Kitchen was my mirror. It didn't show my face, but it told my story. And even if my family never had the courage to ask, the rest of the world had already started to listen. It was just another Thursday night. I had a meeting scheduled with the Rooted Kitchen board to review franchise contracts for our new locations out of state. Everything was set, full agenda, tight schedule. I had no idea what was about to unfold. When I parked in front of the restaurant, I noticed it was busier than usual. I figured it was because of the new campaign. I didn't know that night, the stage was already set, and I was the show. I entered through the side door like I always did. Heels on, beige blazer, hair pulled into a neat bun. Jonah, the general manager, greeted me. "Private rooms ready, Miss Emily." His tone was always warm, but tonight there was something extra in his eyes. I thanked him and walked down the hall, unaware of the glances starting to turn, because sitting at one of the main tables was my family, and for the first time in years, they were looking at me. It was my cousin Sarah who spotted me first. She had a glass of wine in hand mid-laugh. She froze. Then the others followed. Aunt Lisa, my sister Madison, even my mother. All of them, frozen for a moment. My heels echoed on the hardwood floor as I walked past them, without turning my head. If I had looked, I would have seen something I never expected. Surprise, fear, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of regret. I sat down in the VIP room and started the meeting with the execs. While we were going over numbers and logistics, Jonah knocked gently at the door. "They asked about you," he said. "Pretended they didn't know who you were, but one of them asked, 'Who's that woman who walked in with the group?'" Jonah chuckled. "I told them that's the owner, the founder, the mind behind all of this." I took a deep breath. Inside, a storm. On the outside, just a small nod. "Thank you for telling the truth." Later, I heard how it played out at the table. Someone whispered, "You mean she works here?" Jonah didn't flinch. "No. She runs this place. The people with her, they're the corporate directors. They're here to plan the next phase of expansion." Silence. Then the awkward whispers. Nervous looks. A few extra sips of wine to save face. For a moment, I wanted to leave, but I didn't. Because this time, I was the story they were trying to piece together. At the end of the meeting, as I stepped out of the room, my mother stood up. "Emily!" I stopped, looked. She was dressed up, makeup done, smiling nervously, like she could erase the years of distance with one glance. The others turned too. "Come sit with us, sweetheart." That word, sweetheart, sounded like a last-minute rewrite, like saying it in public could undo everything. But that's not how this works. I walked up to the table. Their faces were tight, their smiles forced. Aunt Lisa even patted the chair next to her. "Come on, let's celebrate. We're so proud of you." I stood there for a second, took a slow breath. Then I said, "Pride. Pride is what you feel when you've walked alongside someone. When you show up for them in the hard seasons. When you're there even when there's no spotlight." You weren't. The smiles faded, forks froze, and silence finally took its seat at the table. "I didn't come here to have dinner with you," I said, my voice calm. "No yelling, no sarcasm. I have a company to run, and a life I rebuilt without any of you." I paused. "I hope you enjoy your dinner. And if you like the food, just know, it tastes like resilience." I turned and walked away. Every step on that wooden floor echoed years of pain I had swallowed without a sound. They didn't say another word. And honestly, there was nothing left to say. That night, I wasn't the guest. I was the host. And I served the one thing they never expected from me: self-respect. For a long time, all I wanted was to sit at that table again. To be invited. To be seen. To be heard. I used to think that if they ever welcomed me back, the hole they left in me would finally close. But now, looking back, I realize it wasn't their absence that hurt most. It was the emptiness inside myself. Because when you grow up being told you're not enough, you start to believe it. And my biggest accomplishment wasn't building a restaurant. It was remembering that I was worthy, even without an audience. That dinner wasn't revenge. It was a mirror. And each one of them saw exactly what they'd built. Some saw pride. Some saw regret. I saw peace. A peace that doesn't scream, that doesn't need to prove anything, that doesn't wait for applause. Because when you rebuild yourself from scratch, you learn that your worth was never in anyone else's hands. It was always in yours. And I used mine to cook, to serve, to create. Not just food, but life. Today, Rooted Kitchen has locations in 4 states. And yes, now everyone knows I'm the one behind the brand. I still don't give interviews. I don't need to. My name is on the contracts, on the ribbon-cutting plaques, on the thank you cards we hand out to loyal customers. And that's enough. Being recognized is nice, but being respected, that's better. My entire family knows. More than enough. After that night, the tone of their conversations changed. There were timid attempts at reconnecting, vague invitations, cold messages. I didn't answer, not out of anger, but because I learned never to go back to a place where I only mattered when I stayed invisible. Forgiveness is free. Access is earned. This is the table I built. And at it, no one has to pretend they belong. Because here, there's a seat for everyone, including me. The other day, I heard my cousin, the same one who laughed at me years ago, had filed for bankruptcy. Her clothing store went under. Word spread quickly. People talked, whispered, ignored her. Ironically, it was everything they once did to me. And you're probably wondering, was I happy when I found out? Did I smile? Let's just say, I won't deny it. If you like this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and if you want to help me keep telling these stories, you can buy me a coffee. The link is there in the first pinned comment. Every cup helps me keep bringing you more stories.